is back with another book entitled Bear, which aims to create debate around the dangers of young women getting involved in these romantic relationships. Her first book, titled Shattered Innocence, which opened a can of worms for a lot of South African big shots, all under the umbrella of the booming sugar daddy lifestyle trend. Now Jackie comes back with a jaw-dropping book titled Bear, the Blesser's Game. She's joined by a man who needs no introduction, a social commentator on men's issues, editor and publisher of notedman.com, Superior Beer. Welcome so much to my show.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk to you. No, there's no laughing matter. I know, like, I think you chuckle when you're nervous, and I do that as well.
Yeah.
You dedicated the book to Karabo Mokoena, right?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Whew. Well, she's not the only one, but, well, at that point in time, I felt like her relationship brought light to a lot of conversation. Yeah. And the way she died was deeply questionable, you know? And I felt like if we forget the other girls that died way before her,
or who weren't as
publicized as her, it will be injustice to all women or all young women. Yeah. Because so many women die from relationships that go wrong, or they get kidnapped, or they commit suicide because of relationships, or they just disappear. And I mean, in Sandton, how many girls have you ever heard of them going to live with partners and they never come back? You know, there's dockets that are opened of missing girls day in and day out. And Karabo was one of those people that I felt, you know what, if he had chosen differently, we would be talking a different story. And I didn't want to say she chose the life she did as much as she did, but it could have not really all ended that well. It could have been prevented.
Spiwe, is it, if you are a 38-year-old man, is it too late to change your mind about things?
Sometimes I think so. You know, when I speak to 38-year-old men, I feel that, you know, I think our only chance is the younger generation. Because even those of us who are around about that age, who are aware of these things and who do take time to do the work, because it's a lot of work to unlearn all of these things, you know, we still get it wrong, you know. I think it's Teju Cole who says something, I'm paraphrasing, something around the fact that even, you know, the best of us men, even the feminists among us, still swim merrily in this advantage, you know, or this privilege that being a man in the world that we live in provides. And, you know, so when I do speak to my peers, it's very clear that there's a, you know, and this topic can get a bit exhausting, you know.
It can.
Being in the space, being in this,
exactly,
being in the space that I'm in, you know, I find that I'm having this conversation over and over again, whether it's in private spaces or in public spaces. And sometimes it gets exhausting. Sometimes you feel like you're a stuck record. And sometimes you feel maybe you're preaching to the converted. And then you turn on the radio in the morning and you hear a caller, you know, or you go onto Facebook and you see some of the ignorant comments that will come from, you know, from men in general, actually, you know, kind of across the spectrum in ages. So sometimes it can feel like it's irreparable. You know, we're talking about toxic masculinities, for example. You know, I've been reading recently that actually the idea of masculinity in itself is the toxic thing, not just toxic masculinities, but exactly, masculinity is the problem.
So you did a lot of research, you know, going to this book, and you speak to women, and I find the reason they'll go missing, or the reason we'll end up dead, is because we don't speak out even to our friends so that our friends know what's going on. What did you find, and I'm pretty sure it's difficult to have found this information, but you have a little bit of it. What did you find is the reason that women will stay in these relationships?
Number one is the shame that comes with the relationship itself. Because going into a relationship with an older person or a person who has more power than you, whether it's money or work position, or they have taken you from Ekaya, and then they brought you to Joburg, now you live in this apartment, and now you have told your family, and you have posted it everywhere. Now, going back to the fact that you need to go back home, now this relationship is about to be terminated, you just don't want to say anything. You would rather hold on to these positions as much as you can. I mean, I went to Northwest about 8-9 months ago just to find a conclusion to why I felt that if women were more educated, they will be more liberated, you know. So I found a lady, she had been living with a man for about 7 years, since the age of 18. And she had booked herself into a mental institution instead of going home, so that people still think she's with this man when she's actually homeless.
Oh, wow.
So she didn't want to go home because of the shame that came out of going back home.
You can't keep a man.
You can't keep a man.
Like as if a man is like meant to be kept. Like, why is it my job to keep him? Like,
she opted to actually book herself into a mental institution, of which the man was still paying for, paying for the hospital. But the bottom line was that she didn't want to go home.
There's something you always say, and I find it to be profound, albeit difficult, but very profound, is the fact that you find that you have to police your own friends. Yeah. Right? So when you say you're going to give talks, and you give talks to men, about, where you guys are and how in which direction you should be growing, do you find it's more difficult to call out your own friends?
It is. It is because of how those conversations are framed, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going to go outside of that framing, you're ostracized, you're being too serious, Spiwe is being Spiwe again, all of those things. So it's difficult, and it's difficult to, sometimes you find, which I don't like doing, but you have to pick your battles, You're now kind of stepping back and trying to find the right timing,
Because at a braai and we watching rugby, where now you want to be a feminist.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It only, that process is easier when you recruit one or two of the group, and then it's a third one, and then you see someone sending you a link about something that they've just read that they find profound, and you think, 2 months ago this person wasn't thinking like this. Part of the work I do is running a storytelling initiative called Imbaula, and recent one we did was working through with the Soul City Institute around gender-based violence, and we did a show around that. And there was a man there who was an ex-taxi driver who became an owner and a businessman, but was also in the arts. But he, we wanted to get his perspective about the toxic masculinities in the taxi industry. And we did a workshop with him, and it was just him and myself who were the men in a room full of women, a room full of feminist women. It was a rough room for him, right? Because he had to tell his story and from his perspective. And there were so many things that were new to him. There were so many things that were shocking, so many things that were surprising, so many things that he said that probably usually, in jest, that probably get, a good reception, a lot of laughter. But in that room, they didn't get laughter, So 3 weeks before the show, he had to go away and rethink his entire story, rethink his entire approach to life, And 3 weeks later, when he told his story, there was a different man there. Yes, he wasn't transformed in 3 weeks. We can't do that. But he started thinking differently. And I think that is the big problem with unlearning, is trying to get past this barrier that we are all constrained by this barrier. Masculinity or toxic masculinities affect all of us, men and women, right? Because women are indoctrinated in a certain way, men are indoctrinated in a certain way, and it all feeds into the one thing, the patriarchy.
The reason there is that masculinity is because we're allowing it as women. And that's how we're raised, and that's how we're taught that, But for you, I want to ask, what happens, is there a situation where there's a healthy level of having a sugar daddy? Like, I'm enjoying it, he's enjoying it, he's buying me stuff, I'm sitting at home, I'm pretty. You know what I'm saying? It can't all be bad, surely.
No, it's not really. I mean, in the